Okay, I think I'll get going. Thanks for joining. Really appreciate it. So yeah, today I'm going to be talking about unlocking Azure automation with CloudMaker. So just to tell you a little bit about me, I'm Nick Smith. I'm the CEO at CloudMaker. I was previously a CTO at a cloud MSP in the UK, and I was really responsible for driving the strategy of moving our own data centers 100% to Microsoft Azure. So we had thousands of workloads and trying to figure out exactly how we actually move them from data center to Azure and start delivering new Azure services to our customers. And it was really during that time that I gained a whole load of scars around Azure automation and really experienced this big problem that exists in the market. So thank you to our sponsors. Obviously, without those guys, today wouldn't happen. So it's awesome to be in person finally. You know, seeing people face to face is cool. But the question I was faced with back then when I was in that MSP was, why automate Azure? And clearly there were a whole set of challenges moving thousands of workloads to Microsoft Azure. And the approach that we were taking back then was this manual approach. So this is actually an approach that service providers and enterprises still use today, and it's really the most common approach actually still, which is pre-sales engineers or engineers will start the journey by drawing a diagram. They will then model that into a high-level design document and then a low-level design document and take that information and go into the Azure portal and spin up resources manually. Obviously, this has a whole set of challenges. In Microsoft's scale of cloud maturity, they class this as the crawl phase. And the challenge with provisioning everything manually in the Azure portal is cloud solutions become snowflakes. So engineers manually clicking, deploying servers, deploying services. There's no standardization, and each solution is completely unique, and obviously that becomes incredibly difficult to manage. So here are some of the issues with the manual deployment methodology, and this was exactly the problems that I myself was facing. So manual deployment is obviously hugely prone to error. Everything is done manually by a human, point and click in the portal. This means there's no parallelization between deploying resources. You're clicking, deploying, waiting for that resource to deploy, checking that it's been spun up correctly. And obviously, it's very easy then to introduce security misconfiguration. Obviously, the human is the weak link in the chain, I guess, when it comes to security. And doing everything manually, obviously, increases the scope for security issues. And ultimately, it's more expensive. It's slower to deploy. There's no automated lifecycle management. Everything, again, is being done manually with manual processes. So that really leads you down a track, if you're facing these issues, down the track of automating the cloud, automating Microsoft Azure. And what does that look like today? Well, actually, the piece that is replaced with automation today is that final piece on the end. Engineers and pre-sales engineers are still doing the diagramming using Visio or Lucidchart. They're still producing the high-level design and low-level design documents. And then that's being given to an engineer with the requisite skills to bake into infrastructure as code templates, which can then obviously be thrown at the cloud and deliver that cloud solution in an automated way. So with infrastructure as code, the principal benefit is that it's declarative. So you can actually map out the end solution as code. You then get the advantages of things like code repos and versioning. And to deploy that at scale, you would then introduce things like orchestration and CI/CD pipelines. And on the maturity scale, this is what Microsoft would class as the walk and then run. Now, clearly, there are some challenges that you may already be aware of with infrastructure as code. So whilst it's declarative and allows us to do repeatable deployments over and over again, it's incredibly difficult to do. it now not only requires Azure expertise with your engineers, but software engineering expertise in those people as well. And obviously, those sort of people are very, very difficult to find. I mean, they're almost impossible at the moment to hire, and if you can find them, salaries are astronomical. So it's really difficult, and this really introduces this bottleneck into the organization. So delivering cloud solutions now relies on these highly expert individuals, and it actually can slow down the rate at which you can deploy solutions to the cloud. And it also has security implications as well. So now you're standardizing your deployments, you're codifying it, there's an opportunity to actually introduce security issues into that infrastructure as code. So every deployment that you do over and over again, those same security misconfigurations are being deployed over and over again. And this high complexity ultimately can also increase costs. So if you're an MSP, you'll have multiple customers. There'll be multiple code repos for those customers that you need to feed and water and manage. There'll be updates to resources in the cloud, and you need to manage those updates. And really what you need in your organization is engineers with that software engineering skill and that Azure expertise in a single person. So what's the solution? And really, I guess that's why I'm here today. Well, I believe the solution is to take the advantage of infrastructure as code, so the declarative nature of infrastructure as code, but remove the need to write infrastructure as code. We at CloudMaker really firmly believe that the writing of the infrastructure as code is simply a means to an end. Really what we want is the declarative nature, the repeatability, and all of that good stuff, the versioning that you get with infrastructure as code. But if we can take out the really complex part, which is actually writing the code, then we stand a chance of really enabling organizations to scale their cloud practice. So CloudMaker allows you to design and build and deploy declaratively using diagrams. So if we think about that workflow, now the engineer can actually diagram their infrastructure in CloudMaker. They can configure it visually, and then they can deploy it to the cloud at the click of a button. We have AI assistance that guides the engineer to a valid outcome. And we also have security scanning with our Overwatch security scanner that detects security misconfiguration at design time before you deploy it to the cloud. So reduces the chance of security issues actually making it into Azure in the first place. So rather than just telling you about it, I'd love to give you a demo of CloudMaker, a live demo. So I'm going to hold my breath and hope that this works on the Wi-Fi. So if I jump over to my browser here, so what you can see on the screen is CloudMaker, and when you log in, you land here on what we call the Blueprint Library. And really, this is the area where engineers collaborate together on solutions. Whether you're an enterprise app team, and these are different pieces of infrastructure for different applications, or you're an MSP building different solutions for different customers. Really, this is the area that you do it. So you can see I've got a whole set of different infrastructures that I've already got pre-baked into CloudMaker. If I jump into one of my blueprints, you'll see that this is a completely visual paradigm for designing cloud solutions. So what you see here is a very straightforward Azure infrastructure. So I can zoom in a little bit here. So what you see on the screen is an Azure app service here on the back end, supported by some Azure SQL. We've got some infrastructure here that we've built. And you can see we've got some space here for an Azure App Gateway. We're also using storage accounts and DNS here for various pieces. So the way the CloudMaker works is it's just a simple drag and drop interface. On the left-hand side, we have the resources. We have all the Azure resources in here. You can just simply scroll through and find the ones that you need. I'm just going to drop an Azure App Gateway on here. And if I find the app gateway using the search, I can just drag and move that onto the drawing surface. And you can see we've got some logic built into CloudMaker that actually helps the engineer to build a valid design. So as I'm dragging, you can see it highlights the area where you should really drop this resource, a valid location for that resource. It snaps into place. We can then connect the lines to show things like data flow. And then if we want to configure this resource, it's just as simple as clicking out this properties button and entering the properties for this resource here. So that's how you start to build your diagram. That's how you model it visually. But then we have things like our Overwatch security scanner. So you can see on my diagram, I've got a little icon against my storage account. You can see I've got a little warning on the left here, this little one. If I click that, you can see that the Overwatch security scanner has detected a security vulnerability with my configuration for my storage account. If I click that, it fires open the properties panel. It highlights the property that is misset. So right now, I've got HTTPS on my storage account set to false, and this should always be set to true in almost all cases. So if I set that to true, it clears the error, and now I have a high degree of confidence that my design is secure. So we can now deploy this diagram to Microsoft Azure. We have a number of ways that we can do this. Firstly, we can just export the infrastructure as code. If you're an organization that wants to use your own tools and wants to still use infrastructure as code templates, well, CloudMaker is a massive force multiplier because it speeds up that process. So all I do is click the export button, type a file name, export this, and I get a file that downloads, and in here I have my resource template, resource group template. This is an ARM template, and we'll see this fire up. And when this loads, you'll see I've got over 600 lines of infrastructure as code that CloudMaker has automatically compiled under the hood. So you can imagine 600 lines of infrastructure as code is, a bit of a pain to actually work through and manage. And then obviously if you're doing this across lots of different customers, it becomes incredibly complex. However, the preferred way to deploy with CloudMaker, in our view, is using the CloudMaker deployment engine. And we've actually built some very compelling features, I believe, into the CloudMaker deployment engine, such as state management, and we also handle things like circular dependencies. So the idea really is you get what you draw. What you draw is what you get. So diagram your infrastructure, configure it visually, click the button, and CloudMaker just handles the deployment for you. You don't have to worry. So if I jump into my pipelines here in CloudMaker that I've configured, if I jump into the configuration, you'll see that I've got my blueprint configured in here. And I get to choose the version of my blueprint. So versioning is baked into CloudMaker. So you can see I've got a whole different set of versions that I've created over time. So right from day one when I first created this solution to evolving this solution over time as customers require, I can choose whatever version I want. I'm going to leave it on the latest version. And then we choose the deployment mode. So CloudMaker can deploy directly to Microsoft Azure, or you can integrate with Azure DevOps. If you're doing more advanced deployments using CI/CD, you can integrate seamlessly with Azure DevOps as well. And then we have state management here. So turning deletions on means that CloudMaker now handles all of the state of your deployment. So with traditional stateless code languages like ARM and Bicep, you have to manage all of the deletions of the resources as the solution evolves. With CloudMaker, we handle all of that for you. You can then create different stages, so different environments with the CloudMaker deployment engine. So not all of our customers want to do this, but we're seeing it more and more. You want to deploy to your development environment, and then UAT, and then production. Again, you can do that with CloudMaker, and you can enter in different values for your different environments. So this enables you to do things like start with a small virtual machine here, and then start scaling your virtual machines as you start to move through your environments into production. So once I'm happy with my pipeline that I've stood up in CloudMaker, the final step really is to hit this deploy button. If I hit deploy, CloudMaker will now connect to Microsoft Azure and start to deploy these resources that we've configured in the diagram. And behind the scenes, under the hood, CloudMaker is doing all of the management of the deployment. It's slicing it up into different layers. It's detecting circular dependencies. Does this resource need this resource to be built first? Handling all of that. And then give this a few minutes, and we'll start to see the resources appearing in Microsoft Azure, and I'll show you that at the end of the presentation. So flicking back to the presentation, just to look at the final pieces here. Sorry. So what are the advantages of CloudMaker? Well, as hopefully you've seen, it's easy and intuitive. It's as simple as drawing a diagram. You can drag and drop onto the drawing surface, configure visually. This means you can move at lightning speed, you can move super fast, you can enable engineers to model your customer solutions, but not only that, you can enable lower skilled engineers to interact with those diagrams without having to know how to do infrastructure as code. As well as this, we improve security, your security posture. So with our Overwatch security scanner, we're shifting security left, and we're baking in security best practice at design time before these solutions actually get into the cloud. And ultimately, this represents a faster return on investment. It speeds up delivery times, it cuts costs, and it enables you to scale your cloud practice very, very quickly. So you don't have to take my word for it. We have a 30-day free trial. You just go to our website, sign up, and you can start using CloudMaker. And I'm happy to answer any questions after this presentation. And really all that's left for me to say is thank you for attending. For everyone that kind of turned up a bit later, happy to kind of answer any questions after this. But yeah, really, really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.